Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and as part of our efforts to support play, we've introduced these Porch Play Chats. Porch Play Chats are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA USA, and you can find all of our Porch Play Chats by going to our website at ipausa.org. Up in that top right-hand corner, be a friend on our Facebook page, follow us on our Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat appears in your feed. With me on the porch today is Heather Bernt Santy. Hi, Heather.
Hello. I have to say, I love all the videos. I hope everybody goes and looks, because I was trying to find one for a specific class the other day, and I couldn't believe how many. Like, I don't listen to them all. But I couldn't believe how many great topics there are. And I was like, well, now I have to listen to them all.
I know it's truly
so many good people.
So many good people and so many advocates for play that we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm hearing from professors is that they're using them as like conversation starters in their courses. So I'm like, awesome, because that's what I use them for.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And we have like 165 of them now.
I know,
so
it's wild.
It's wild. So it's very exciting. So Heather joins us. Heather's had over 30 years, she is not that old, of experience, and her all around her commitment to children and their families and teachers. You might know Heather from her work as the host of a popular early childhood and education podcast, that Early Childhood Nerd, and she's having two very exciting people on the podcast next week, so I'll let her tell you about that. Heather is a professor, writer, and consultant. She's, like me, held probably every position there is to hold in the early childhood profession. So please know that this is a life profession. There are ways to grow and develop.
Lots of opportunity.
So many opportunities. If you love teaching, please always stay as loving teaching. Right? Don't do something that you're not comfortable with, but there is a career path in this field. So today, Heather and I are going to talk about, and I'm getting to your topic, Heather, unless you want to tell me what it is as I scroll through all the people. Which one is the topic?
I think it's play, individualization, and standardization.
You got it. That's it.
Like, I hope that's what it was, because that's what I've been thinking about this morning.
Awesome. So that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I like that topic.
Yeah, well, I just, I've been doing a lot of writing about play, and a lot of reading and talking with other people, just, in the teaching classes and all that kind of stuff. And it just seems like we give a lot of lip service to looking at individual children, but when we look at different regulations and quality rating systems and learning standards and things for this age group, so I'm thinking birth to 5 specifically, but I think it fits birth to 8. What we really want is standardization. So it's like we give lip service and we say, oh, we really are in favor of individualizing, as long as it ends up in a standardized child, as long as our efforts to individualize end up in a standardized child. And I think that's so developmentally backwards.
It is.
That it needs to be unpacked and made explicit. And what I feel like is when we look for, global we, not you and me, Deb, of course, or people listening, but when we as a field look for learning about an individual child, it's not to see that individual child. It's not necessarily for building relationships or just really understanding this other human being. It's looking for how they're not standard yet. We'll individualize in the sense that we will look at how these individuals don't meet the standard. And then when we say we're using our individualization and our observations of individuals to to help support the learning, the goal is always the standard. It's not necessarily developmentally responsive to what we learn about the individual child. And that becomes it's really frustrating for me. I think it's unfair to children and to teachers.
It's almost like we're trying to, and this is what I think we've been channeled to do, even though we shouldn't be doing it. It's like, okay, so this is where they are, let's get them caught up, instead of this is where they are, what does this child need in this moment, how can we best support this child, how can we scaffold development if necessary. It's
Right.
all about how can we catch them up
Yeah.
without understanding that this is a human, not a widget.
Right. And so instead of looking at what can I learn about this individual just so I know them better, so that I can support where they are, I can think about, okay, so what might be next for them if I know this is where they are, but also looking at what's interesting to them. How are they already thinking about things? What are they already really competent in or about? And how do I keep that rolling? It's when we talk about standards, like, so our state just changed their early learning standards. So I've been looking at them a lot lately. The new one, the old one was the same way, and they're and maybe every state is this way, but they're designed to be aligned with the K-12 standards. The kind of we don't do Common Core. We don't do the Common
Every
Core,
state is
but what we've done is we've looked at what kind of an 18-year-old do we want, and let's just push everything back and back and back and base our standards on how they're not yet 18 at 13 different levels as we go through that, instead of saying, developmentally speaking, what's typical and healthy and to be expected, and how can I support this individual in their spot that they're in now?
Yes,
and then moving up, instead of, we talk about the early childhood to elementary school continuum. That's, or maybe not the word specifically, the phrase, but they talk about needing to be a smooth continuum. But we do it backwards. We're making a continuum that goes backwards, instead of looking at, here's what 3-year-olds need, are really good at already, are exploring on their own. How they do all that, we're just mashing
it's
that
like
continuum down onto their shoulders.
Yeah, we are, and that typically leads to unrealistic expectations that are a mismatch where they are developmentally, right? So if we just looked at Giselle's milestones, not that everything Giselle said I believe it, but a lot of what Giselle did, I believe it. Right? If we just looked at those and say, here's what typical may mean, because every child is different, they're not widgets. And what if I build on the child's strengths? I always go back to what Gardner said, don't try to catch them up on the multiple intelligences that they may not have a strong level in. Use the ones they're really strong in and build on their strengths, not on their areas of weakness. But I think lots of the time we focus on the weaknesses versus on the strengths. And then we lose sight of what this child is capable of and how we can use those strengths to help them and scaffold their learning.
I was looking for some examples in our state standards, early learning standards, for things that are expected of preschool age children that I feel like are out of whack, that are not appropriate. And the social emotional stuff was where it hit the heaviest for me. I mean, every area had that, but like the standard for a 4 or 5-year-old is that they express accurately and respond to emotions of self and others, and that they can predict reactions from others.
What?
Isn't that ridiculous? So
45-year-olds who can't do that.
exactly. So, an
God.
individual 4-year-old could be made to could be seen as having this deficit because of the way we've framed standards. And so when we're looking individually at that child, all we're seeing is that they don't meet this standard of predicting reactions from others. And if they don't figure it out in time for being a 5-year-old, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And we have all these horror stories about gaps and not being ready. And it doesn't
scary.
make sense to me. It doesn't seem like anyone who's thinking in terms of individual children versus learning standards is really looking at
Development.
And
they're
it's
learning at what they want. They're not
right.
looking at what's possible.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's, that of course that interferes with play and
Absolutely.
with people wanting to provide play and allow play and ensure play for young children. It creates this idea of having to have them all standardized by the time they go to kindergarten creates a huge barrier.
Yes.
And I think so standards contribute, but I think the other thing that contributes to a lack of respect for the individual and therefore a sort of withholding of play or gatekeeping of play is just the idea that we have to do things in groups. We have to get through our daily schedule and everybody has to do every activity, or else we can't measure where you are on the standards. And so we take away play in favor of circle times and group times and 20-minute intervals to get everybody through everything. And
we let the clock
classroom
control
management systems where everybody has to move through every activity. It doesn't feel to me like we've really used much, again, global logic in this whole idea of, well, sure, we'll individualize and that's very important, but we need to end up standardized.
I think you have opened a huge can of worms that needs to be investigated, because I think we semi-learned, well, I don't think we've learned it, but those of us who understand how harmful No Child Left Behind was,
right,
have seen that, even though, and again, I always say, I hope it was done with good intentions, but sometimes I'm suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
Even
good
though
intentions for whom becomes the question there.
Exactly. Even though it's been impacting the education system since 2001 or 2002, the outcomes have been detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're in an upper middle class or high class school district.
I mean, that's the other piece of it, is who are we calling standard?
Yeah.
Whose culture and lifestyle are we calling standard?
Yeah. And where and what kind of equity is in place for every child?
Mm-hmm.
Not an equal opportunity to attend school, but an equal opportunity to attend a school that's well funded.
Yeah.
Is not fair, because we've taken funding away as punishment. So, I think that we didn't learn from that. In fact, I don't think you were on the day I was ranting. So the middle school, like 13-year-old standardized test scores came back, and oh my God, we're lower than we were before in math and reading for 13-year-olds. And what does one, and I think it was Massachusetts, but if it's not Massachusetts, I apologize for saying it was Massachusetts. I think it was Massachusetts whose And everybody was like, oh,
Yeah.
and I think it was Massachusetts, but if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, that said our our way of solving this issue is we're going to cut summer short by 20 days and bring kids in and catch them up.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, my God, you've been trying to catch them up for 20 years, 22
Yeah.
years, and it's not working because what you're doing isn't working.
Yeah.
We've lengthened the school days, we've lengthened the school year. None of that.
We've pushed academics down younger and younger. It hasn't solved the problem.
Nothing has worked.
Yeah. So I just
focus. Go ahead. You've got a book. I can't wait.
do. I have to, I have to have a book in the conversation, but I just started this new book called The New College Classroom by Kathy Ann Davidson and Christina Katopodis. But what you just said reminded me of something I read last night where they did, and this is talking about college classrooms, but there was a study done, over many, many years, and the results were that students were not learning better or the way we wanted them to. But they said there was a study, and the authors of the study quipped that if the comparative merits had been this clear cut in a pharmaceutical study, traditional pedagogy would have been taken off the market. And I thought about the way we've been doing things since No Child Left Behind. If this was some other, like that pharmaceutical study, that we were seeing decades of no progress or backwards
progress.
We would do
something different.
We would be doing something different.
So I don't understand where the disconnect is in looking at it logically like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's and to me, No Child Left Behind was politics, but I don't understand why we can't see what has been impacting that lack of difference in what happened. I mean, the schools in the wealthy school districts, the kids are at the same level. They're not any better. The children in the lower income school districts are much worse, right? Because you took funding away, took resources away, and so, I don't get it. I don't get it. And I don't get why we're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, if Lisa was here with us, she'd say, follow the money.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
People are getting rich off of, well, not getting rich, but profiting off of curriculums designed to solve this problem. And, every time there's a new educational buzzword, there's new grant sources that, low income already, I'll say low income, but like programs for childcare, early childhood, whatever, can only apply for the grants that are available, right. And if only grants are available are informed or driven by bad policy.
Right. Oh my God. It's just a nightmare.
And so many programs feel like, and I worked for one that was like, yeah, maybe this isn't an appropriate literacy goal or whatever, but it's the only place offering us money. So we have to say, we'll do it to stay in business so we can even provide care for these kids. And I don't think that was an isolated situation.
No. And that's, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. And so when we think back to what we can do as early childhood professionals with all this god awful standardized stuff, it's I always talk about in my college classrooms when they're doing their planning for play, right? And this is like a teacher guided or just an observation where they sort of set up something, or they are just observing children, so they have to plan for play in the classroom without necessarily being a small group activity. And they're preschool, so we'll just start with preschool, though I'm always saying letters and numbers do not belong in an infant or a toddler, right? Too abstract, right? They can't
as direct instruction. Yeah.
Oh my God, really? Stop it. Anyway, so there's so many more things you can do. And so what I make them do these days, and in our early learning standards, they're not perfect, but the Pennsylvania early learning standards sounds better than your states. And so because they're doing something that has a literacy or a language focus, I make them go through each of the standards in language and literacy.
Mhm.
And they have to find the ones that have anything to do with letters,
Yeah.
sight words.
Yeah.
And they can find 2 out of 40.
Yeah.
And I say, so what's the focus of your language and literacy? And they'll look at me and say, well, probably not letters. And
That's such a good way to do it. Yeah.
and they defend it. Oh, I found one. Okay, what is it? What does the standard say? And they'll tell me what the standard says. And I said that it doesn't mean anything to do with letters.
Mm-hmm.
Read what a teacher can do to support that practice. And they go, oh, there's nothing in here about letters. It doesn't mean you're not writing on chart paper what children are saying. It doesn't mean, but it's not trace this letter T or spell this sight word, right? And I make them do that every semester because I'm so sick of getting language and literacy lesson plans or planning for play that is only about letters.
Yeah.
What happened to flannel stories?
But they don't exist anymore.
What happened to how does your story start? What
Yeah.
happened to, I mean, it's just because of this push down. It's this push down stuff
Yes.
again.
Well, one of the things I think that contributes to it too, that is not an easy fix. I mean, I recognize its impact, but I don't know how to fix it, is that especially now when there's such a staffing shortage in early childhood programs, but at least like in Indiana, there's 5 different ways to be legally operating, and each way has different qualifications. And then even like the licensed center, if you're just licensed, your qualification is this to be a lead teacher. But if you are on paths to quality, it's this, that's our rating scale. And if you get accredited, it's this. So we're just, our qualifications are so uneven that it's easier to do school-like activities when you've got a revolving door of staff coming in.
And that's absolutely true.
And when they don't all have a basic level of child development knowledge.
Well, and what my students tell me in the classroom is, even with, I want to do this, but my director won't let me.
Yeah. Because
the directors are feeling pressure from parents. And so I always go back and say, if you could demonstrate that what you were doing is effective, right? So I've changed from developmentally appropriate practice to developmentally effective practice.
I talk about developmentally responsive practice and supportive practice.
So there you go. So
effective, that's good too. Yeah.
Yeah, because DAP isn't DAP anymore. So developmentally effective, developmentally responsive, any of those ways to frame the conversation.
Yeah.
If you can demonstrate that it's developmentally effective or responsive, and that children are achieving the outcomes developmentally that are age appropriate, or at least in a span, right? And you can show growth over time, which I think is the most important thing. A child walks in your door and they have a certain amount of vocabulary. How much vocabulary do they have at the end, right? That's how I measured success with the child.
Yeah. Yeah. But so much of that can be attributed just to biological maturation. But we want to take the credit for it. It's because I was such a good vocabulary model, and I don't want to take away, because that is important, of course.
No, but it is true. It's part maturation, but at least I could show with this individual child of Billy, he walked in with this, and at the end of his 3-year-old time with me, he walked out with this. Yes, lots of that's maturation, but it's demonstrating to families that children are learning,
right?
And to the directors, play, right?
That sort of started with teachers feeling like they couldn't do things the way they want to because their director doesn't understand it, because of the pressure the director is getting. So I think that's a responsibility then, right? We have this responsibility to do no harm. A malpractice is a strong word, but I think a lot of what we do in early childhood programs focusing on standards and academics can be could be labeled malpractice. Now, I'm not saying that anyone wakes up in the morning, and some people have heard me say this before,
Right.
rubbing their hands together and saying, how can I do malpractice with the children today? But this sort of uninformed, again, not as an insult, you don't know what you don't know sometimes, but we have uninformed folks doing important work the best they can with the model that they have, which is their own school a lot of times, or the catalog, or the school that their kids went to,
or the curriculum that they're
or the
handed.
curriculum that comes down from above. And so it's really hard. It really requires a commitment to learning, whether we're in school or not, but to learning about childhood and development and appropriate priorities, and then being able to sort of translate that for parents and administrators and I think this is an ideal time. You think about how in love everybody is with Reggio Emilia, and I love Malaguzzi, not so much the things that we sometimes call Reggio.
Right. Kind of like Montessori. Is it Montessori?
Yeah. Carol
Okay.
Garbone Murray once said something about being Malaguzzi informed, and I love that so much. But anyway, what they did was they took, a real time of chaos and destruction in their culture and decided, what do we want to do moving forward? We want to focus on the children. We have kind of a blank slate. Let's build these schools and let's decide as a community how we want to do this. Coming out of COVID and all the ways that impacted us, one of the main ways is we have a staffing shortage in early childhood. Now, we always had high turnover. Now we're really struggling to get people in the door to do the work. This is where we have power. This is where we could be saying, because maybe you're going to get fired. I don't know, but I doubt you're going to get fired for advocating for play, and for trying to prove how you can meet the expectations by allowing and understanding play for children. We have this opportunity. We're so worried about everybody falling behind and scores and readiness that we don't feel maybe comfortable or confident enough to push back against that. But we are living in, I think, what could be a really pivotal point for our field, but also for the children who are coming through our spaces.
Yeah. And I think what I want directors to hear is that you can demonstrate that play is an effective method or tool. If play is how we see play, play is not 15 minutes of rotation. Play is child initiated, following the child's interest, long periods of time without teacher interference,
but teacher support and facilitation. We still have an active role.
Right. You're not painting your nails while children are playing. And if directors feel confident enough that they can demonstrate how play is effective in helping children develop the foundational skills they're going to need in the future, then that's what we should be focused on. Put all that money you've been putting into a curriculum, buying a curriculum, put it towards staff salaries and benefits.
And training,
And training.
And mentoring and coaching kinds of things. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think our outcomes will be much more positive for the children in our care, and parents will go, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. And we also have all this great, we could have all this great information about the brain to support play now.
So much information about the brain.
That's another thing we hear. Oh, more brain development happens at this time than at any other time during their life. And so we assume that means we need to be teaching earlier and earlier and have controlled instruction earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
But if we really look at what that's saying about the brain and how the connections are formed, it's absolutely play.
It's play.
And that sets the foundation for everything else. So, but that's another example of hearing that buzzword or that catchphrase and not really diving in to say, what does it really look like? We jump to an assumption.
Yes. Well, and I think we do that because we're trying to find the solution. So I think, again,
Absolutely.
intention is good.
Yeah.
But the outcome is not what we're
Mhm.
asking for, or not
Yeah.
what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think also, and this ties, I think this fits in with where we started with standards and what happens to the individual child then when we're so focused on standards. At least I know this was my experience in the 90s when all the brain stuff first started to come out, and Rob Reiner had his I Am Your Child Foundation out,
Yes.
and all the states were getting money to do stuff for infants and toddlers because of it. So many of us said, yes,
But
this means I'm a real professional and I deserve respect. We took that new research and we said, how does this impact me? That teacher ego gets in the way too. And I think that's also why standards are appealing to some, because we see concretely something we can be teaching and saying we're doing that sounds,
and we're more
teachery.
professional.
Instead
And
of saying, oh, what does this research mean for the children I'm working with?
yeah.
These individual children who are with me.
Well, and I think the whole thing comes from the stigma of, oh, you're just babysitters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in some cases, that's what we are in some programs, because you have people who may not have the training that they need, and they're just watching the children, right? And so I think that comes back to what qualifications do you really need to be in a classroom, right? But with a staffing shortage, of course, that's a dream at the moment.
You know, at the risk of shocking people, I guess, I would so much rather have the person who's just taking care of and just caring and just letting them play than the teacher who feels like every moment needs to be controlled and led by me and focused on academics.
Yes.
In terms of mental well-being of the children and just childhood in general. I mean,
they should be playing.
And
following their own interests. And so, I think as directors and teachers and parents, we need to recognize that standardization is for widgets on the factory line.
Yes.
Not at all for children. And not for humans, right? Because
and what do we do with widgets that somehow don't end up at the end of the assembly line the way we want them? Throw them out.
We throw them out.
We cannot treat children that way. We cannot process them that way.
We cannot. And so we really have to shift our thinking to what's best for the child. Not what's best for me, not what's best for the family, even though it's really important, but what's best for the child, and how do I build on that child's strengths? And I'm sure if you need to align it with standards that you can, but I'm sure you can. You guys are creative. You can figure this out. Yes, I can take this standard and I can show you how your child met it.
Absolutely.
That will help families feel like what you're doing is valuable, and we all want to be valued as professionals. But again, we have to go back to what's best for this child. And that needs to be the focus. And if you need to find a way to align it with those standards, fine, you can figure it out. Parents don't understand the standards anyway.
Right.
So you can figure it out. But we really have to focus on where Billy is, and where Sarah is, and where Jenny is, and where Jamar is. We have to focus on that, not focus on the 3-year-olds or the class of 4-year-olds or the pre-Kers.
Right. And move away from the idea that, okay, you're telling me I need to individualize. Well, I've got 24 4-year-olds in my room and one other adult. I can't plan every day 24 different things for 24 different kids. And that's not what we're asking you to do. But when you see the individual and you plan for one individual, chances are others are going to come in and want to join.
And if it's play,
move more towards full free play. And when you do have to lead something, a small group of just a few that's based on interests you've seen, and you'll see it's so much easier to do that individualizing.
Well, and you don't spend so many times in transitions and so many times in conflict with children who are really not done in the block area, even though you say it's time to clean up. And so I think if we could go to being more intentional in the way we approach the classroom, You're not painting your nails over here while the children play, but you are observing, documenting, taking photos, doing
Mhm.
whatever you need to do to
Wondering.
demonstrate, right? To demonstrate what children are doing in the classroom. Parents love photos of their children.
Absolutely. And if you hook on a little tagline there that uses some of the standard language in an authentic way, I'm not saying lie to
Mhm.
people, but you can do that pretty authentically.
You can.
Then that's going to grab them more than a daily sheet at the end of the day, or, you know, some project they made in their cubby at the end of the day. If we can figure out how to do that, we can make a lot of headway with the parents to be on our sides for this.
We can, because we're authentically demonstrating what children can do.
Yeah.
Not what we ask them to do.
Mhm.
Right. So I do think that we have to sort of shift the way that we're speaking to parents and supporting children's development.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness, as always, Heather, this has been amazing. Don't go anywhere.
I
while
must be
close it
hyper
up.
caffeinated. I'm all worked up now, more than
Yeah,
usual.
me too. So, to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.
Yay.